Welcome to You Are History, Ohio Edition, a captivating series of interviews that spotlight the influential voices and impactful stories of Black leaders hailing from the vibrant state of Ohio. In this exclusive series, we delve into the lives, achievements, and experiences of trailblazing individuals who leave an indelible mark on their communities and beyond. Through engaging conversations and profound insights, we uncover these exceptional Ohio-based influencers' unique perspectives, challenges, and triumphs, showcasing the dynamic contributions of Black excellence in the Buckeye State. Join us on this enlightening journey as we honor these remarkable individuals' legacy, resilience, and innovation, affirming that in Ohio, as in the broader tapestry of history, they are not just making history, they are history. Don't forget to like, share, and comment where you're watching.
So, Attorney Robert Bush, what
Yeah,
an honor and a privilege it is for me to talk to you one on one.
thank you for the opportunity. I'm flattered that you called me.
Oh, this is an honor. I have some questions for you. I need to know your story. We want to start. We've got about 45 minutes, and you have been the law director. You have been the chief of criminal in the prosecutor's office. You have been a cop. You have been a mail carrier, I believe. You have been a dad. You are a husband. You are a grandfather. And you have run for mayor for the city of Youngstown. And you have been a leader. And you've done that quietly from the background. A lot of people don't know a lot of this story. So let's talk about a little bit. Where were you raised?
Was I raised
Yes.
Campbell, Ohio, little town east of Youngstown. In fact, it used to be called East Youngstown until the 1930s.
And so you went to Camel City schools.
Yes, ma'am.
What was it like then? You are you're you're 50 years old plus,
76.
and so there's a lot of time that has changed. The world that we were born in and the world we live in are two different worlds. What
Yes.
has changed in Camel, Ohio, and Youngstown, Ohio, from then until now that you can see?
I think some of the biggest changes is when people talk about accountability. I don't say that. It's we've gotten away from this. No, I can say we've drifted away from your word is your bond. When I was growing up, it was just that simple. Your word is your bond, and that was pretty much it. And people went with that, and that's what they said. You bring a new thing?
And so, because I was taught that, I was taught my word was my bond. My mom said, "Don't let your word fall to the floor. If you
Right,
say something, mean it, and you
right,
do your best to keep it." And you didn't need a contract; you shook a hand,
exactly, exactly,
and we treated people with face value.
right. Well, that's one of the things that uh I, happened once I committed to you. Some other stuff came up, and I wasn't questioned, but I said, "Well, let me check my calendar." I said, "I got this thing with Tracy. That's it. I gave her my word. I mean, I wasn't being challenged, but I gave you my word. So that's that. I'm here."
So how do we get back to that? I mean, because you got grandchildren now.
Yes.
I mean, how do we get that type of integrity back
You
into society?
you know you live it visibly, and you put it in your expectations. Talking about grandchildren, Artie, he's the oldest grandchild. He lived with us. We raised him. And some things I've heard him say some things, and I'll think, boy, he did get some of what I was preaching and showing in him. He has a group of friends, and they do these entertainment things and these shows, and everybody has a responsibility. You go pick up the artist, you go get the rental car, you go do this, you go to that, and at the end of the night, or end of the show, when everybody wants to hang out and be cool, well, you got a ton of stuff to do. And he was so upset that the guys would not do their commitment. And he was really, I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they said this and this. I said, I thought that was your friend. He said, he is my friend, but he made a commitment and he didn't do it. And I think he got some of that from me that uh, I'm not going to challenge you, but I'm going to hold you to your word because I'm holding myself to my word. And you do that, I really think almost one person at a time. But Tracy, here's also what you do. We have all, and we will all be put in a position of a self test based on our morals and character positions. And when nobody's looking, that's when you have to decide what you're all about. And when I was director of Job and Family Services, something came up, and the county HR director says, Bob, did you do such and such, such and such? And I said, yeah, that's what I did. And she said something that caught me ear. She said, we thought that's what you would do. Now, it was not the popular position, but it was the right thing to do. And I kind of chuckled to myself, and I moved on. But that was let me know that whatever my expectations were or whatever my position was, people respected it enough to know they didn't agree with it. They knew we know what Bob Bush is going to do. He's going to do the righter thing versus the popular thing.
So let's go back to Camel as a young man. Did you
Yes,
play
ma'am.
football? What was it like? I mean, were you an athlete? Because you remember, I know the story, so I'm trying to get this out of you. So did you?
Have Bank give me a call.
So
Well,
did so did you? How did I mean? Were you academic? Were you an athlete? Were you a nerd?
no, not was a nerd. A little bit of both of those because everybody played at that time. The big thing was football, and maybe to a certain extent baseball. Basketball was really non-existent, and we academics wasn't stressed, but I ran with about 12 guys all through school from kindergarten till we graduated, and there was this level of academic expectations that the group instilled upon itself, and that's kind of what I bought into. I had four sisters. I'm the second oldest, and my dad uh, only had a fourth grade education. He was from Alabama. He had a fourth grade education. My mother was 20 years younger than my dad. She had some college. So, but he knew the value of education, and that was always out there. If you acted up in school in those days, a teacher talking to my mother was he had or she had my life in their hand. If my mother got a bad report from a teacher, I was doomed. But they stressed the value of education. And that whole group, our whole neighborhood stressed that, and it was kind of part of your expectation.
It, community, because you were raised up in the time that we all lived in the same neighborhood, and
Right.
everybody had a common authority over everyone,
Exactly.
and we've lost that along the way.
Right.
As your experience in law enforcement and in working at Job and Family Services,
Hmm.
do you think that has impacted our inner cities and our communities?
Very much so. Yes. Uh, when you talk to people that feel threatened by neighbors, threatened by community kids, it makes an impact. It makes an impact on your quality of life because we had bad kids in our area and stuff, but uh your house per se was was sacrosanct, and it wasn't messable. You could still leave your doors open. Nobody would go in there. And but that carries over into your conduct at school and your whole expectation. And today, I think the school districts uh, have gotten away from educating. They're more into, I don't know,
Social
raising.
services.
Yeah. And so I can use the fact that I'm hungry or you think I'm hungry as an excuse for getting a D or an F in a subject and for acting out. And your peers see that, and that becomes your norm.
So now, here we are, 2024, and we're celebrating
Hmm.
Black History Month.
Yes.
And within Black history, I don't see the real history being told. That's why we're interviewing people of history.
Uh-huh.
Because when I look at, you said your mom and your dad. If you're 70 some, that would have made them in the 90s and 100s right now.
Right.
And and you're older than me, but
Hmm.
my mom is 93, so I was raised with that era in mind. And their view of society and priorities is different than my view.
Right.
And somehow we're not exhibiting our greatness anymore.
Right. It's it's almost it's almost individualized, Tracy. I feel that we are each, particularly those that are coming behind us, we will get an opportunity to take a position based on our race, based on our education, based on our qualifications. And to me, the issue is, are you willing to do that? And it's not always easy. And like I said, growing up in Camel, most of my teachers were white males. They were World War II vets, and they had went got their degree on the GI Bill, and I never had a minority teacher. But as I look back, I had a couple of those teachers take a unique interest in me, and uh, in fact, my guidance counselor, who's my fourth grade teacher in Campbell, when I went to high school, he came up a year later as a guidance counselor, and he called me in the office, changed my schedule because I had study halls, some study halls and some general math and stuff like that. He says, Robert, we're going to change your schedule. And I said, oh, Mr. Monaco was his name, Dominic Monaco. Had been in the Navy. I said, Mr. Monaco, my mother already signed my schedule. I got my schedule. I'm ready to, it's done. He said, I talked to your brother. We're changing your schedule because you're going to college. Now, I was a ninth grader. So there had been a conversation between a white guy and a black female because my dad did not talk to, if you weren't a steel mill guy, he basically didn't have nothing to say to you. But he supported my mother. They had decided then that they were going to change my schedule in order to prepare me for college. You know, I saw my dad cry two times I can remember. One, he was a hunter, outdoorsman. We had a hunting dog named Bojack, got hit by a car. I came home from school. I said, "What's wrong with Daddy?" And my mother told me Bojack got killed. He got hit by a car. And the second time I saw him cry was when John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Hmm.
He said, I come home from school and he said, Bobby, those SOBs killed Kennedy. That's all he said. And he had
Wow.
tears in his eyes. Because I think Kennedy at that time was the hope, for our people. And he sensed that, and that's it. He never he would say something he never talked race in our house or race relations. He said, "You are you. You do the best you can." And he would say, every now and then I would say something. He said, "There's two things you can't tell me about." He said, in his words, the American Negro and a Southern white man. He'd always say that. And again, being from Alabama, as we grew up, my mother would say, and he was an only child. My mother would say, she called him Dad. Dad, let's go down south and visit your people, blah, 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 blah. He'd always say, Joanne and Bobby, we were the two oldest. He would say, Joanne and Bobby won't understand. He ran away when he was 14. And he went back to Alabama once in his life. After that, he never went back. And he would say this to me. He said, boy, it may change in the city. It will never change in the country. And that's pretty much the case to this day. You know, your big places on the surface seem to have been progressive. You got black mayors, black councils, black police, black chiefs, all of that stuff. But in the country, it's pretty much hasn't changed. And he said, but you do your best. And he would sit there when we got a report card every 6 weeks. He had a clock in his head. And I would be praying. I would be praying to my mother, you know, don't give me up. And she would go over my report card with him. And she said he did okay in this, did okay in this. He went down in this. He needs to come up. He could do better in this. And he'd sit there and he said, you hear what your mother said, boy? Yes, sir. And Tracy, almost 6 weeks to the minute, he'd be doing whatever. He worked the mill. He worked shifts. He'd say, isn't it about time for that boy to get his report card? I said, how can he remember that? She said, yeah, it'll come tomorrow, day after tomorrow. And he'd sit there and he'd say, how did he do? And she said, he came up in this, he came up in that, he did okay in that, he did okay in that. And that was it. And that became, I didn't realize the value of it, but I started buying into this education thing. And as I moved along, decades later, I started seeing that once I know 1 and 1 are 2, no one can take that away from me. And I used to tell young folks when I spoke to groups that, hey, one of these days somebody's going to say, who knows how much is 1 and 1? You can raise your hand. They'll say, you're hired. That because you got it. You can't take that away from you. They can't take that away from you. So now you take that racially, all of that about you got to do better. You got to be better than your white counterpart and stuff. I believe that. And my answer to that, or part of my answer to that, or part of the way I address that is, I'm going to make you tell me no. That's my big thing with kids today. Yeah, it's going to happen. You're going to be biased against. You're going to be discriminated against. But don't sit on the sideline. Get in the game. Make them tell you no. You know, then you learn from that, better yourself, go back out there. Eventually, you start staying in the game longer than you're sitting on the bench. But if you don't get off that bench and try to better yourself, they're not going to ever call you. Make them tell you no. And when you get, and I'm not bragging, I've helped dozens of people get political jobs, civilian jobs, Board of Education jobs, housing authority jobs. My only demand was, hey, when you get to where you can, reach back and grab a hand of somebody that looks like you. That would be my marching order for if I help someone, they say, well, Mr. Bush, what can I do for you? Hey, when you get to where you're going, reach back and help somebody that looks like you. That's that's it.
You've never let your race limit you.
No,
Um, why? It's not like you. I mean, it's not like you could pass. You're a dark-skinned African American black man.
right?
So you have broken barriers
Yeah,
without tearing the door completely down. And you've
right.
had some people to help you along the way. But
Yes.
but while you were there, you were a standout.
Thank
You were, you can understand, you were on the police force when there wasn't a whole lot of black folks on the police force.
correct.
How was that?
Uh, I was talking to someone the other day. When I was first on the police department in '71, before we filed a lawsuit, there were 360 policemen. That's a lot of policemen. 360 policemen in Youngstown, city of Youngstown.
Wow.
19 minorities. That was the number, 19. And we had never had anyone above the rank of detective or sergeant. That's what they called it. And the way the power structure would try to satisfy the minority community, the minority leadership, the black leadership, they had this term, let's say for me, for instance, Patrolman Bush assigned to the detective bureau. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Patrolman Bush assigned to the auto theft squad. So, and I understand though, we our leadership in the community accepted that. But behind that, when you're on one of those, when you had that position, you generally worked nights, which was fine, and you generally worked black on black crimes. So you didn't get, they call them sheets. You didn't get the sheets in the rogue in the detective bureau where they pass them out based on you might be working burglaries, robberies, kidnappings. You got your sheet based on it seems like this is black on black. You didn't mess with the white crime. But again, Tracy, I did that. Uh,
But let me ask this before you go there. But how did that
yeah,
work? Because black on black prejudice, black on
you,
black authority, and black on black competition, it can be worse than racism white on black.
right.
Because we really are vicious and can kill some people when
Yes,
we look like ourselves.
yes.
And
Well,
so you were in uniform now, patrolling
right.
your own people. How did that go down?
Well, most of my career, I was working in drugs. They called it the narcotics and vice unit. So you were dealing with a different issue. When the guys that worked the beats, south side, east side, certain parts of north side, uh, they were assigned. You were assigned, quote unquote, the black card, and uh, if there was a white officer assigned to that card, he looked upon it and was generally seen as a punishment because he ticked somebody off and they put him on, quote unquote, the black card. But your relationship with the black community during those days was still pretty much one of respected authority. Okay,
Hmm.
respected authority, and you could almost go to any crime, disturbance or whatever, and as long as you were pretty much civil, you got the respect of that group or whatever. And you had all the authority of a police officer, but if you didn't hopefully abuse it, and I know what you're saying. So again, most of our community accepted your presence as a police officer that was black.
So you stayed on the police force, but then somehow along the way you got tired of the police and you went to law school. I mean, so why couldn't you just not be settled down and retire like everybody else, or go into and make sure you moved because you came back and you became chief of police.
Right, right.
So what made you take a leaping in faith and say, okay, I think I want to become a lawyer now?
You know why? My growing up and my service, including my military service, I saw that as a natural progression. You know, when I got out of the when I got out of the Marine Corps as a crew chief on a helicopter, to be honest with you, all I knew how to do was shoot you up with a machine gun. And I sent a letter, application letter to the CIA. I never forget that because, and they still do it. The head of the CIA is a civilian, but the person under them is usually from one of the military branches. And at this time, it was a Marine Corps general. So I sent a letter in, told them my qualification. I got a response. They said, we don't have any openings for anyone in your culture at this time. But I went from military to law enforcement as a natural progression. And as I'm doing this, I looked upon the practice of law as an extension of quote unquote law enforcement. So I thought I was climbing the ladder in the law enforcement venue. That's how I ended up going to law school.
So you were in the I didn't realize you were in the Marines.
Yes,
So you're a
ma'am.
veteran.
Yes.
You know, the Marines is pretty much the premier military agency that we have. You can't be dumb and go in.
No, I went in during the draft, but I volunteered. I volunteered.
Did you see any war?
I got two Purple Hearts. Yes, ma'am.
Really?
Yeah.
Two?
Yeah. Two.
And you still moving?
I'm still moving. Still moving.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your service. I did not. I think
Thank.
I knew it, but forgot and did not realize that.
Yeah.
So, what was the military like?
See that you know what, Trace? That went into my culture too. The Marine Corps was the last branch of the service to segregate.
Correct.
The Marine Corps now, and in those days, and maybe to the day when you, particularly your enlisted part of the Marine Corps, your enlisted officers were right. I swear, were right out of Alabama, Mississippi, you know. And these guys were E7 career enlisted people, but they were right out of the South. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was over in Vietnam, Ebony Magazine was going to do an article on myself and my gunner. We were one of the few black crews in the Marine Corps flying in Vietnam, and they were in Da Nang. They were going to come up and do a feature article on us, and they never got up there because it was just too hot, too much, too much action. But when I went to the first sergeant, who was white, and I got my plane and stuff, I was a crew chief. I said, "Hey, Top, I want a guy named was Gilbert Sanders, dear friend. He was from Harlem, New York. He loved New York." I say, I want Sandy to be my gunner. He said, "Saunders?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, Lance Corporal Bush, how do you think that's going to look?" Now, here's the conversation. He said, "How do you think that's going to look?" I'm 19, 18, 19, 20. He's at that time probably 45. I said, what you mean, how's it going to look? With two black guys flying together, you guys might get hurt or get killed. It might look bad. And I said, "Top." And I don't know what to say. And I say, "Top, well, when the two white guys fly together, they don't say nothing." And he looked, he says, "Well, Bush, I guess you're right." I mean, that's how elementary our conversation. So Sandy and I started flying together. But you got some of that in the military. And I was over there in that squadron for almost a year and a half, and I only saw one black officer pilot during that whole time.
Wow.
And when I went to training, I went down and It's an area called Millington, Tennessee. It's a suburb of Memphis. It's a huge naval station, training station, and which was right next to Mississippi. And that was my first interaction with hardcore racism. Uh, in fact, when I went to Memphis, I think I went by bus, and I'm sorry, by train, and I'm standing there looking for directions, and I walked up to the information thing, and the lady said, "They can look at you, tell you your haircut. You going to Millington?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Well, go out there on the sidewalk, and they'll tell you. You know who to talk to. They'll tell you where to go." I said, "Well, who do I talk to?" She said, "Go out there. You'll know." I go out on the sidewalk, and it was a line. I mean, there were black, they call them red hats,
Hmm.
that help with the luggage, and white ones that help with the luggage. I'm standing there, and the white guy saw me, the black guy saw me, the black guy approached me, which was fine. And I looked over, the white guy standing next to me, same thing, the white guy approached him. Now we're both going to the same place, on the same base, on the same bus, but that was my first uh, witness to segregation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you look at racism,
Yes.
because over your years you have felt the pierce of marginalization,
Right.
racism. Um, how did you overcome that? How did you overcome it to push through it? And what information do you want to have for your grandchildren and your great grandchildren? Because people are people, and prejudice doesn't change.
No, it doesn't.
And
No,
we
it
need to
doesn't.
stop acting like you can make people change because we wish it.
No. My when you talked about marginalization, again, I was blessed. I am blessed. All white folks aren't bad. I and like I said, Mr. Monaco looked out for me and had me change my schedule. When I was working drugs, I had two bosses. It was two guys there. Friedenheimer, which is white, and Roger Halbert, another white guy. Now Roger was a little younger than Rich, and Roger, this was at the end of the riots, towards the end of the riots in '71. He was It was LEAA money. All the cities was getting this money to better educate the policemen after the riots, and a lot of the cities, big cities, were burned. He had got his degree and everything. So we talking one day, and he knew about the numbers down at the police department. And he said something to me that ticked me off. And did he checked me about it? Here's what he said. He said, "You know what? They used to call me Skin." He said, "You know what, Skin?" I said, "What, Roger?" He said, "You be the first token lieutenant. You be the first token captain. You be the first token chief." With that term token, I'm getting hot. He said, "Wait a minute, wait a minute." He said, "But you know what?" I said, "What?" Now I'm hot. I said, "What, Roger?" He said, "When you get your check, it's gonna say Lieutenant Robert Bush, Captain Robert Bush, Chief Robert Bush." He said, "You determine how much tokenism you're going to be." And
Nice.
that's what he said. He said, "Now, the Youngstown Police Department rule book, we used to call it a blue book, and that's what they still call it to this day." He said, "Skin, when you get the blue book and you open it, all the rules and regulations, all the policies are in there. It doesn't say white rules. It doesn't say black rules. It says rules of the Youngstown Police Department." He said, "As you move up, if you decide as a lieutenant or captain, chief, sergeant, detective, that you can't do things in this book because of your race, now you're a token. That's based on you." He said, "No one is ever going to tell you, they may say you can't do that or you shouldn't do that because of the situation. No one is going to ever tell you that you can't do that because you're black." So that's where that tokenism came from. And I took that to heart, Tracy, and I can name a dozen times when that issue came up over my working career. And they didn't say black, they just said, oh, you can't do that. But it was implied. And I tell this to the kids. I didn't write the book. The white folks wrote the book. Flip to the book, flip to the page, and it says such and such, such and such. Now, it doesn't say this is for the black leader to say this. This is for the white leader to say this. They said it's for the leader to say this. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to say that. And it's hard, even for the system, even with systemic racism, to fight their own rules. Now, they're going to come at you. That's why you got to be better than them, better prepared, give it full thought, full consideration. All those traps you cannot fall into because they're waiting. I know they are waiting, and you're going to be challenged. You're going to be questioned, and all you do is flip it open and say, page 7 says so and so, so and so. That's what we're doing on page 7.
So
It
now,
sounds simplistic, I know, but it works. It works, and that's why when I made that decision and the HR director for the county said, we figured that's what you was going to do because it was the right thing to do.
Bob, you became a lawyer.
Yes,
And when I look at the Mahoning County Bar, we have less black lawyers inside the Bar Association in 2024 than we did when you passed the bar in
right,
the 70s.
right.
And so when I look around the courtroom, and you've been a prosecutor in the courtroom,
Yes,
and when I worked in the prosecutor's office, the only people of color that I saw in the courtroom that were of color were the defendant and their family.
exactly.
2024, we've had you as a prosecutor, chief police, lawyer, law enforcement. We have more population than ever before, even if it's not in Youngstown. We have more opportunity to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go to law school, you can become a lawyer. How is it that we are not? We want to talk about, black crime. We want to talk about what's going on in the judicial system, but nobody is in the courtroom inside of these cities, and this is across the country.
Exactly.
What's up with that?
When I talk to younger folks that are not in the system and say, how about law enforcement? You know, I'm not going to be Uncle Tom. I'm not going to be a snitch. It's a lot of it's that self-imposed peer pressure that pulls them from out of the profession. And to be honest with you, they don't have a lot of uh, role models in the system that they can look to. You know that they can look to, or the ones that are in the system don't realize that they need to be a role model. And when they say you get the justice you can afford, that's very true. And also, and I had no problem with it. I thought I was a good prosecutor. I prosecuted a ton of people, but I spent a lot of my time defending those same people that I prosecuted because the system was geared against them, and the system was violating their rights. Uh, Sentencing issues were different for white versus black, and all of that. So you again. Remember, I said when you get to the position where you can reach back and somebody to help you. I couldn't do that in that situation, but I could challenge the court. I was the prosecutor. I could challenge the defense counsel who turned their back on their client. I could challenge the law enforcement part of it and say, we're not doing that. That's not right. We're not doing that. And when you do that, generally they're going to adhere to or listen to you. But again, they're going to come after you, and you have to be ready for that. It's uh, the system is never going to lay down. And we are the system. We make the system.
So it's up to us to refine the system and to break the barriers
Yeah,
and
yeah,
continue doing it.
right. And again, you're going to have that opportunity, whether you're the street sweeper or the chief of the criminal section. You're going to have that opportunity. We were going to Judge Bannon, who a lot of the policemen didn't like him, and I was his prosecutor. He was getting ready to. He didn't send a lot to prison, but when he did, he maxed him out. He was sending this young guy to prison, and he put in for uh, treatment in lieu of conviction because he was had a drug history. And I'm standing there, and the judge sentenced him, and I'm looking, and I said, "Wait a minute, Your Honor." He said, "Yeah, Bobby." I said, "Judge, the state of Ohio is going to change its position. We oppose the treatment in lieu of conviction. We're going to change our position to we support that." And he stopped. He said, "You do?" I said, "Yeah." Now the defense lawyer is standing there. I said, "Judge, if you look at this guy's record, every crime he did is drug related. Although this particular crime, which was grand theft auto, was not a drug crime, he's still in his car to make money for drugs. It ain't like he was gonna steal this car to go racing. So his whole life has been a drug thing. So I think he does meet the criteria to go into the drug program." He
Mm.
says, "Oh, okay, the state of Ohio does this," and he went ahead and sent him to the drug program. After court, he called me in. He says, "Bobby, I want to commend you for what you did." I said, "Thank." He said, "That took a lot of courage. The policemen out there were hot." I said, "I know." And you said, his defense lawyer wasn't doing nothing. I said, "I know, John." But he said, "Bobby, you did the right thing." He said, "Another thing, the bad guys, you're going to know them when you see them." He said, "You know them when you see them." And, we went on, and that was that. So again, that rightness, it. And as you articulate up or into positions, you'll have an opportunity to, let's say, right or wrong. You can right a wrong. And it's within your purview. It's not going to make you a popular person, but you have that right and that responsibility. You have that responsibility to do the right thing. But because of some other things you mentioned earlier in the show, I've been in the closed room and behind closed doors with quote unquote black leadership, and I've seen folks uh, take care of themselves versus the greater good. And you're going to have that opportunity to make that decision, and the only person that's going to know is you. And eventually, the system realizes Bush is going to try to do the right thing as best he can. So we'll work around him. That's fine or whatever. Or we're not going to bring this issue to him. Or we're not going to put this on his plate because we know the outcome. And that's been pretty much that needs to be communicated to the young folks today. A lot of uh, our black leadership today feels you have to walk in lockstep with them in order for them to support you. I've been called Open Tom for 50 years. But the old timers that I learned around, they didn't care. The names: Dr. Perry, Isidore Blakeney, Dr. McDuffie, Mr. Street, Arlette Gatewood. These guys were Democrats and Republicans.
They were just
Uh,
writers.
yeah, Dr. Lee, Reverend Lonnie Simon. Here's what their position was that I learned watching them and talking to them. We ain't worried about your politics. You don't have to walk lockstep with me. However, when we give you a call, we want you to answer the phone. That was it. When we give you a call, we want you to answer the phone. And their position was the more diverse, quote unquote, our community is, you got somebody in the independent camp, you got somebody in the green camp, you got somebody in the Republican camp, you got somebody in the Democrat camp. The more diverse our community was politically, the stronger we were. Because one of these days you're going to get a call, say, hey, I was on the school board. Hey, Bush, we got a young man, a young lady that's trying to get into the apprenticeship program at skilled trades at school, uh, the school union. Can you help them out? That's all they said. Your response, yeah, I'll see what I can do. You talk to the union, you talk to the president, you talk to, but they say, yeah, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that, we can. That's all they want you to do. You say, yeah, send them to see Joe Blow. Now it's on them. Once they get in, it's on them. They didn't. I'm a Democrat. They didn't ask me my politics, but they have expectations. And I've been at meetings where they've talked to minority people in the meeting, and uh, we were going to run. When I first ran for school board, they looked at me and says, "Who's Robert Bush?" I said, "Oh, they didn't even know me." I said, "Me." They said, "We're not going to support you. You're going to go every 2 years." That thing came out. They said, "You'll be in the next thing, next round. We'll support you." I said, "Oh, okay." There's another black guy there. He said, "I gotta go. I got all this money involved. I got all these people waiting on me. I got all these people working for me. I'm running this time." And this is interesting. They say, "Okay, well, we're not going to work against you." They never did that. They said, "We're not going to support you, but we're not going to work against you, and we wish you well." That's the difference. And 2 years later, when I ran, I got total support of the black community because of these guys urging. And that's how that worked. The folks nowadays, they want you to vote for who they vote for. They want you to support whoever they support, and they want you to walk in lockstep with them. And that's not the way I came up.
Well, I got to ask you, since you brought up politics, you
Yes, ma'am.
ran for mayor,
Yes.
and I watched the posturing of the politics.
Yes.
Make sure you not win.
Yes.
Let's be real. I mean, I watched
Yep.
them. I was here. I was young enough, smart enough, and with enough people to watch them split the vote up so bad
Mm-hmm.
to make sure they would water down the vote enough that they would never see you as the primary candidate.
Right.
What did you have envisioned that made them want to stop you from going forward?
I,
Ah,
what I had envisioned was I'll do for you as Tracy Winbush as I'll do as much as I can to help you as I can to help Alice Sinkovich. That's it. That
a
was
level
it.
playing field.
Level playing field. Yes. And you hear things. I didn't want nothing for it. It comes with the territory. If I could help this segment of the community, I'm going to help that segment of the community. I don't want anything other than for you to progress because the better you do, the better I do.
Well, I know
It,
that
you
I
know,
have found what I've learned when I ran that the system does not like people who think independently.
right.
And now when I look back at Ed DePincham's race,
Yep.
your race,
Yep.
my race,
Yep.
there are people that ran that didn't have masses behind them. They just ran because they love the city
Yeah.
and the people.
Right.
And the last thing that the structure wants is people who are going to open up the system to the people.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I want to, before I go, because we've got to talk about your family.
Okay.
Um, you have an amazing lady that you chose to be your wife.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we got to talk about how family plays a part in the success of you and Black history.
Yes. Uh, extremely strong. You know, like I said, I've been privileged by family and friends to do any whatever I want to do. Bobby, we support you. We support you. We support you. But at the end of the day, when you come home, you're coming home to family, and uh, they were not often in my stuff, but they took flack for being part of my stuff. But they always supported me, and uh, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, they've always supported me. And I used to say to them, hey, don't, and my sisters in particular, Lord have mercy, don't fight my fights for me. Because I don't fight like that. They wanted to do, they wanted to do shoot 'em ups. I say, don't fight my fights for me. You don't have to defend me, let my name, and let me stand alone as far as that. But my wife Gwen has always supported me, encouraged me, and took abuse for me.
Now, you guys have been married how long?
Uh
Uh-oh.
75, 40, 48 years. 48 years, April 4th.
What
Yep.
advice do you have for those of us who are still single? Because, strength doesn't come in a package. It's matured and it evolves.
Right.
And to choose a good mate
Hmm.
is optimal. How do we find the qualities now with all the noise? Because right now, things are
Right.
weird.
Yeah.
Because I asked you about your grandson, and you're like, you got. But you look at who he is. If he gets the right girl, he's going to be a phenomenal man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you nowadays we're to the point of you're asking questions. You're asking questions, and you're consciously looking and evaluating. There's no perfect person. And there was only one. There's no perfect person. And if you want to stay, let's say, in the public limelight, and uh, I tell single guys and ladies, as you get a little older and you're single, people get set in their ways. You're not going to change a guy or a girl who shuns the public light and say, okay, we're going to hit it and be in the society page every day. That's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. So it's communication, sharing, love, church, and I'm sorry, I blew that one. It won't
Mm,
happen again.
saying you're sorry.
Yep.
Your faith.
Yes.
How has it guided you?
That's been my bellwether for forever. I go to a church that is really really conservative, not in politics, but it's a holiness church, and they think only people that's going to be in heaven is them. But uh, they're very supportive of my efforts because they think, Brother Bush, you're doing a good thing. You're doing the right thing. You're doing a good thing. And they knew all these folks that I had mentioned earlier, and they know some of the more progressive pastors, but sometimes they look at those progressive pastors, they as a Christian is seeing some stuff that they don't think they should be seeing. You adopt it, you surround yourself with it, and you just don't let it go. You have your values, and they your religious values and your personal values should coincide. They should become one and the same. One and the same. And then you step out there. You step out in faith.
But Bob, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and talk with me. I know you're retired and busy a lot,
Yes, ma'am.
but you have been an inspiration to a lot, and a lot of people didn't know your story.
Thank you.
And the wisdom that you've given today will last for generations.
Thank you,
Um,
Tracy. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I really do.
I do too. It's you've done a lot. We have mutual friends, and when I hear the admiration that they have for you in different circles, it's really, really amazing and humbling because you have really impacted a lot of people that people don't really understand of all races, ages, social demographics,
Hmm.
economic statuses. You have put a footprint in this world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope a little bit of me when I'm up there on Belmont Avenue on the ground. I hope a little bit of me still survives.
Oh, I'm quite sure it does. Your name is everywhere, and your footprint has um, it's made an impact. So thank you from the county, from the
Thank you.
city, from the professional, from the church, and may God bless you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Okay, Lord.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to each viewer who has joined us on this journey through your history. Suppose you have found inspiration, insight, and connection in the stories shared by our remarkable guests. In that case, we invite you to consider supporting the continuation of community programming like this through a donation. Your contribution will help us amplify diverse voices, celebrate rich histories, and foster meaningful dialogue that uplifts and unites us all. We also extend a special thank you to our sponsors, whose generous support has made this series possible. May your history continue to resonate in your hearts and minds, inspiring you to embrace the beauty of diversity and the power of unity. Thank you for being a part of this transformative journey, and we look forward to welcoming you back for more engaging and enlightening content in the future. Don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe to this channel, and give God the glory.